Ahoy there, Captain Benzie here, coming at you from inside the Fulmination Content Creator Test Server with another video for EVE Echoes. In today's video we're going back to looking at the missing E-War ships that are currently not available on the live server. We've already had a look at the Tech X E-War frigates, the Tech X E-War cruisers, and now today we're going to be looking at the Tech X E-War Battlecruisers. That is of course the Brutix E-War, the Hurricane E-War, the Drake E-War, and the Harbinger E-War. Now as you can see on screen now, these are really cool looking ships. They've got some really interesting bonuses and I reckon they are going to be very popular to fly. So I thought we'd take a little sneaky peek at what's possibly to come here when these are added. Now, I do say what's possibly to come because, as I've mentioned, I am on the Fulmination test server, so we have to put in that usual caveat that everything you see here is subject to change. These are currently only visible on the Content Creator test server, and you do need to know a special code to magic them up into existence. They don't appear on the market or on the ship trees at all, so I've got no idea when these are going to be added, and they may be in a slightly different form when they're added onto the live server. So if some of the stats or fittings do change, please don't shoot the messenger. I'm just trying to give you a really cool sneak peek as to what could possibly be coming soon. Now, if you do enjoy this video, let me know by hitting a like on it, sub to the channel for all things EVE Echoes, ding that notification bell to never miss an upload, and let me know in the comment section down below what ships and topics you want to see covered in future videos. If you do want to go and be extra awesome and go the extra mile to help support this channel, you can do so either by joining us on Patreon or by checking out the Redbubble merchandise store if you've ever fancied representing the Catskull Cartel or the Catskull Academy on things like t-shirts, hoodies, stickers, water bottles, all kinds of crazy stuff over there. Do take a look and let me know what you think. That all said and done then, let's jump right into talking about the Tech X Electronic Warfare Battlecruisers. First up then, let's have a look at the Harbinger E-War. Now, the Tech 8 Harbinger is a fairly popular battlecruiser. It's of course the one with the laser skills out the wazoo. Interesting looking ship, and I adore here how the E-War version looks. That sort of black coloration with the bright silver detailing just looks really mean and badass. And as you can see from the iconography here on the front, this is a Carnid Empire version of the ship. And yeah, you've seen things there like the Dragoon Assault, etc., using these kind of color schemes before. That black and silver, to me, looks amazing on a ships. It looks utterly badass. Fortunately, it doesn't just look badass, it flies badass too. Now, as we look at its attributes and fittings, I am going to be comparing this to the Tech 8 Harbinger, and just to give an idea of what this is it an upgrade, is it a side grade, is it just a different ship altogether? So, starting off with the fitting profile here on the Harbinger E-War, we have one drone tube that can launch small or medium drones. That is of course supplemental damage for anything that gets close. We have 7 whopping high slots, which will be your medium lasers for the most part, 5 mid slots. Read that again, 5 freaking mid slots. That is a lot of electronic warfare, tackle, and all of that we can put into the mid slots there. That's a really versatile fitting profile there, but only 4 lows. This means that things here are going to be slightly squishier than perhaps the standard tier 8 Harbinger, which has only 3 mids, but does have 5 low slots. So we're losing 1 low slot to gain 3 mids. We're still also sitting around with 3 combat rigs and 3 engineering rigs. So straight away there, you see we've got a bit of a mixed bag going on. We're losing some of our defensive capability, but we're getting a lot more versatility in regards to electronic warfare, which makes sense on a ship that is called an E-War ship, right? Now, looking at the power grid as well, the power grid has increased here. It's 1209 on the Harbinger, it's 1323 on the Harbinger E-War. That, of course, is there to allow us to fit those additional mid-slot items there. Things like Nosferatus, target disruptors, that kind of thing are obviously what we're going to be looking at putting into those mid-slots. Now this is also doubled up with a good healthy capacitor upgrade. 4727 on the tier 8 Harbinger comes up to 5373 gigajoules here on the Harbinger E-War. That just means we're going to be able to keep those electronic warfare modules or tackle modules or whatever it is we're putting into those mid slots running that little bit longer without burning through our capacitor quite as quickly. Our defences are also a massive improvement here, 29,277 on the tier 8, up to 36,061 here on the Harbinger E-War, and that is an absolutely phenomenal armour tank there, 11,433, that is a big amount of armour. Now obviously we're hoping that by the time these are launched the armour tanking is buffed to the point that it is actually worthwhile doing. That said, the shield here isn't terrible at 7761, so if this did launch tomorrow in its current state, you could probably still shield tank it and get away with it, especially with a ridiculously powerful capacitor like that. Also worth noting that we've got a particularly high structure here, 9,340, so this ship really can take a beating. It may have lost a low slot, which means we're probably losing things like, you know, some hardeners or boosters, repairers, that kind of thing. But instead, we're getting a massive passive increase to the tank, which is going to help its survivability an awful lot. As we get a bit further down, the signature radius has dropped from 222.7 down to 184.9. That's a fairly significant drop, but it's still, you're a battlecruiser. No one's going to suddenly be missing you because you've dropped, even though it's, you know, a good, what, 40 meter drop there in the signature radius, it's still not going to change all that much. The flight velocity is a nice improvement, though, alongside that. 185 has now increased to 206 meters per second, giving us a little bit more of a speedy little ship. Now, you'll see here that the mass and the inertia are almost identical. The mass has gone, stays at 15.5 million kilograms. The inertia has changed from 0.42 up to 0.5, so this is a slightly more cumbersome version of the Harbinger. And there's a part of me that does hope that maybe that gets changed. Maybe it just gets brought into line with the Tier 8 version at 0.42. I don't know. There's a part of me that thinks obviously having it as that little bit, it's weaker in this regard because it doesn't orbit as well, it doesn't accelerate and decelerate as quickly. It's not as agile a ship. Does kind of make sense when you look at all of the other buffs across the board, that it's got that little bit of a weakness there that perhaps obviously with all the changes made to its, like, you know, its sensor arrays and things like that, that perhaps it does have a little bit less in the way of propulsion. That kind of makes sense to me from sort of a background and lore perspective. It's also worth noting that, talking about sensors, our scan resolution has increased to 253, up from 226, which is a fairly sizable increase, allows us to lock onto a target that little bit faster and start applying our E-War. Now, of course, this is an Amar ship, so the E-War that we're talking about is going to be tracking disruptors, those ones that mess with your opponent's targeting systems on things like turrets, whether they're lasers, cannons, decomposers, or railguns. Tracking disruptors will mess with those, which makes them actually personally one of my favourite electronic warfare systems because they affect so many enemy ships. Now, being a Harbinger, we're getting that usual roll bonus here of 25% increase to medium laser optimal range and a 25% increase to medium laser accuracy fall-off. Now, this works really well with both the long-range beam lasers and the short-range pulse lasers, so if you want to go brawling or sort of semi-sniping, you can do that quite comfortably here with the Harbinger, and that is of course the same as the Tier 8 Harbinger. Where things differ is here in the damage. Here, Advanced Medium Laser Upgrade is giving us an 8% increase to medium laser damage and a 10% reduction to medium laser capacitor need. That's up from a 6% damage increase on the Tier 8 Harbinger, though the capacitor need is the same. A 50% drop in capacitor is plenty enough as it is, especially with a larger capacitor bank here on the Harbinger E-War. But we are going from having 30% additional damage on the turrets up to having 40% additional damage on the turrets. So it's an extra 10% DPS there, which is not to be sniffed at when you've got 7 high slots. That's a lot of damage that this thing is going to be kicking out comparative to its Tier 8 cousin. The other skill down, if we have a little look further here, is a reduction to inertia modifier of 5%, a 10% increase to tracking disruptor strength, and a 10% increase to tracking disruptor optimal range. Now, that inertia modifier, again, that is the same between the Tier 8 Harbinger and the Tier 10, but those tracking disruptor strengths and optimal range skill bonuses are unique to the Harbinger E-War, which kind of makes sense. It's an E-War frigate? This is definitely not an E-War frigate, this is an E-War battlecruiser. It's meant to have those mid-slots in there, those tracking disruptors. The fact that it's going to get 50% additional tracking disruptor strength and 50% additional tracking disruptor optimal range is monstrous. Basically, as we're looking here at the Harbinger E-War, this is almost categorically a direct upgrade over the Tier 8 Harbinger, which you'd kind of expect by the time you can fly a Tier 10 ship, but it's also getting some really cool bonuses to those tracking disruptors, which are going to work beautifully both in solo PvE and solo PvP, and in fleets, because you're going to be able to deal out a whopping amount of damage, more damage than you could in a Tier 8 Harbinger, and you're going to be able to do that whilst messing with your opponent's turrets. That's really, really cool. Now, just as a quick note here, this ability under the roll bonuses can fit command bursts. I have talked briefly about command bursts in other videos. I will be doing a video soon as there was some more information came up on Reddit recently that I want to talk about in regards to command bursts. We don't exactly know how they're going to work in the game yet, but they're basically little boosts to everyone in your fleet nearby. This means the Harbinger E-War is going to be amazing in fleets, and I'm actually really looking forward to flying one of these. Next up is the Brutix E-War, and this is a really interesting little change to the ship. The only real difference between the Brutix and the Brutix E-War, the Tech 8 and Tech 9 variants, is that the E-War version, obviously it's got the Creadron logo there on the front, that little sort of diamond shape, but it's got a much more metallic sheen to it. The green is much more sort of shimmering is the word I want to use here, which is actually really quite pretty. It looks kind of like a blinged up version of the Brutix, and in fairness, when we look at its stats, that's pretty much exactly what the Brutix E-War is. Now, like the Harbinger E-War, it has that same profile of 1 drone tube that launches small or medium drones, 7 high slots, 5 mid slots, 4 low slots, and then 3 of each of the rigs. I just want to draw your attention again to that 5 mid slots. I mean, heck, if I just close this down and have a look at it actually on the fitting screen, 5 mid slots, just look at that. That's insane! I just love the way that curves around the bottom there. Have you ever seen another ship with 5 mid-slots? And no, I don't think that's necessarily going to be nerfed, as we'll discuss in a moment in regards to the Hurricane E-War. I do reckon that that will be how it launches, with 5 mid-slots and 4 low slots. The 4 low slots obviously mean we get a little bit less versatility, or rather we get fewer options in regards to things like weapon upgrade modules, damage tanking, or propulsion systems, so you do lose probably in this case either one of your your weapon upgrade systems or your damage control systems, like, you know, your shield tank or armor tank or whatever it is you're going to be putting in. Shield tank, unless armor tank gets fitted. But ultimately, we are still getting that boost to the defences here. This is a massive boost. Again, we've gone from 28,214 on the Tier 8 Brutix up to 34,753 here. So you're losing less, you're losing a low slot, which means you're maybe losing a some kind of tanking module in the low slots, but instead you're gaining passive tank increased to the battlecruiser itself. And remember, of course, if you're training into things like battlecruiser defense upgrade, that is percentile based, and so adding 1,000 points on there, you know, it's an additional 30 or whatever percent on top of that. It's an exponential growth. Every point of defense higher here on the Brutix E-War is multiplicatively bigger thanks to those skills. That's a beautiful word, multiplicatively. I need to actually check if that's a word I've made up or if that is actually a proper word, but there we go. And of course, our power grid has also increased, 1087 up to 1170, that allows us to cater for that additional 2 mid-slots. We're gaining an additional module overall. We've lost 1 mid-slot to gain, 1 low slot to gain 2 mid-slots, so of course we need a bigger power grid in order to facilitate that. Our capacitor bank also is larger. 3,150 has now shot all the way up to 3,672, which, not as big a jump as perhaps the Harbinger had, but then again, this is a Brutix. It doesn't need it, because lasers are not, railguns are not as capacitor hungry as lasers are. As we come a bit further down as well, our signature radius has dropped. This is down to 196.3, sorry, I can't read, 196.3 down from 236.5. It's a big drop, but again, we're still looking at a battlecruiser. It's still going to be fairly easy to hit. Flight velocities had a nice boost as well, 182 up to 203, and interestingly enough, the mass and inertia this time are actually the same, which is why I'm considering that the Harbinger, actually it may just be a bug and they bring the Harbinger and they bring that inertia into equality with the Tier 8 version. Both of them are 11.8 million kilograms with an inertia modifier of 0.5 times, so there's no change in agility between a Tech 8 Brutix and a Tech 10 Brutix E-War. Makes sense. We are still getting an increase in our scan resolution as well. That's gone from 222 up to 249. So overall, tankier ship that's getting a lot more mid-E-War opportunity there. Now, of course, disappointingly, this is the E-War ship, so that is going to be sensor dampener strength and sensor dampener optimal range, which, quite frankly, in their current state, no one cares about. Again, unless we're getting significant changes to how sensor dampeners work in, like, the balance update, which should be coming fairly soon as well. I think we've got a special server coming up in April where we can try out those changes. Unless there is a significant change to how sensor dampeners work, then you're kind of just going to ignore the fact that this has sensor dampener skills and just use this as a better version of the Brutix. because we've still got that really cool roll bonus. Medium railgun optimal range, medium railgun accuracy fall-off, both increased by 25%. This is really beneficial when it comes to medium snub-nosed railguns, as it actually gives them a good optimal range and a good accuracy fall-off, rather than just giving them a really good way of one. Some people have asked, why do I take it that when it's optimal range and accuracy fall-off, I think it's better for snubs? It's not so much that it's better for snubs, it's that having a good boost to optimal range and accuracy fall-off actually makes snubs worthwhile. By benefiting both of the ranges there, gives you a good option. Obviously, if you want to go for medium rifled railguns, then having additional optimal range and additional accuracy fall-off there is going to be better, and in terms of raw kilometerage, again, there's another word that I've probably made up, in terms of raw distance, in terms of kilometers, you are going to be getting a bigger effect, obviously, if you were to fit rifled railguns instead of snub-nosed, but snub-nosed obviously have that additional damage, and the fact here that the Brutix E-War gets that increase to its medium railgun damage, again, it's 6% increase on the Brutix Tech 8, whereas it's an 8% increase here on the Brutix Tech 10 E-War. That is a difference between 30% at full training and 40% at full training. 10% additional DPS, nothing to be sniffed at, especially if you're going brawling with a whole ton of medium snub-nosed railguns. We then get the golden armor repairer efficiency stat. Now this, again, it's still 7.5% as it was on the Tech 8 Brutix. This is one of the only times when armor tanking a ship is actually beneficial. When it comes down to pure maths, the armor repairer efficiency bonus here brings your armor tanking up to comparable with shield tanking. This means if you were to be shield tanking a Brutix E-War or using an armor tank on a Brutix E-War, this is one of the few times where it is not categorically better to shield tank. You are actually probably going to get a slightly better output by armor tanking it. Again, until we get a balance change that fixes armor tanking and improves how that works. I'm hoping it is an improvement to armor tanking, not a nerf to shield tanking. Shield tanking feels fine as it is, I just think that armor tanking needs to be improved as well. The fact is, it's got worse passive bonuses and worse EHP per second, whereas here, with that armor repairer efficiency, you get considerably better HP per second, which is a really nice change and means armor tanking does actually work. So long and short of it here, if we're ignoring the fact that the sensor dampeners are even a thing, again, the Brutix E-War is going to be a direct upgrade over the Tech 8 Brutix. So if you are using a Brutix and it's your brawler of choice or it's your sniper of choice or whatever you're doing with it as a battlecruiser, then yes, 100% it may be worth swapping to the Brutix E-War. You're going to have to deal with the fact that you've got a little bit less tank in the low slots. You've only got 4 low slots rather than 5, but you are getting those 2 additional mid slots, which, heck, you could put group armor repairers on there, or group shield boosters, or whatever the heck you fancy there, and get your tank back that way, and just get the additional damage, faster speeds, etc. that the Brutix E-War hull otherwise applies directly. The Drake E-War, I think, is going to be one of the most popular ships once we hit Tech 10. Certainly the Drake itself at Tech 8 is one of the most popular battlecruisers, and I've been speaking with a few people recently who are like, hey, I'm fully mastered into the Drake, I'm having a great time with it, I'm flying it in storyline missions and encounters and all that kind of thing. What do I do from here? What is my next ship to go to? And the answer really is, there isn't one. You can kind of side grade into the Cyclone line of ships and that kind of thing, but if you're enjoying the Drake, there is no direct upgrade. That doesn't mean you have to reskill into something like battleships. Well, once we get the Tech 10 E-War battlecruisers, we have the Drake E-War. Now, curiously enough, this does actually get a Rosethorn skin, which I completely failed to notice, and as cool as look at that is, let's be honest, this is the skin that everyone wants to fly. That slate grey black with the vibrant red detailing on the top there. Again, this just looks like it means business. That is one mean looking ship, and it can back it up with its stats. Now, it's interesting to note here that unlike the Harbinger and Brutix E-War, which had 7 highs, 5 mids, and 4 lows, here we're only getting 7 highs, 4 mids, but we retain our 5 lows. This is an interesting change between those two variants. So the Harbinger and the Brutix both get 5 mid slots and 4 lows. Here the Drake is getting 4 mid slots and 5 lows. So it's going to be just as tanky as the standard Drake is, but you're getting that additional mid slot. Of course, just to do my usual full spiel there, that's a drone launching tube, small and medium, 7 high slots, 4 mids, 5 lows, 3 engineering rigs, and 3 combat rigs. So we're getting an increase to our mid slots and our E-War potential. it's an E-War battlecruiser, the hint's kind of in the name there. Now again, this means of course our power grid has been increased to compensate for that. 812 megawatts up from 733 allows us the extra power grid we're going to need in order to fit some stuff into that mid slot, that extra mid slot. And spoiler alert, it's probably going to be things like guidance disruptors, because that's what the Drake is going to get as a bonus. Our capacitor has also increased. 2,363 has gone up to 2,823. Fairly big boost. Again, that's there to allow us to actually keep running that electronic warfare module, or whatever it is we're putting in our mid slot, that little bit longer. Our defences, again, have gone up, so even though we still have the 5 low slots, we're getting an increase to our passive defences, which is really, really cool. It was 27,264, sorry, reading my notes wrong, 27,264 HP before. It has now gone up to 33,582. That is a big boost here to an already fairly tanky battlecruiser. The fact that we've still got those 5 low slots means you don't have to sacrifice any of your tanking modules either. You're just getting a flat up increase there on your defences. The signature radius has gone down. 245.7 down to 204 meters. Of course, we're still a Caldari battlecruiser, we are still a big target, we're not going to suddenly be speed tanking. It's nice to have, it means you mitigate a bit of damage against some of the larger weapons out there, but it's still, obviously you're still a big ship. Flight velocity as well has increased from 168 up to 188 meters per second, but that's still frankly pitiful. It's a Caldari battlecruiser, Caldari ships are slow, Caldari battlecruisers are noticeably slow, and obviously the only slower ships in the game are Caldari battleships. Very slow, still a large target, but tanky enough to deal with that. Our scan resolution has gone up by 25 from 202 to 227, so we're going to be able to lock on that a little bit faster, and curiously enough, our mass and inertia, again, almost identical. Still 13.5 million kilograms for mass, but the inertia modifier has gone from 0.48 up to 0.49, which does actually make quite a noticeable difference. I know it only looks like it's 0.01, but it does make a big difference in the agility calculation, and you will feel that, especially if you're running something like an afterburner or a micro warp drive. Just it'll take you that little bit longer to accelerate, decelerate, and you'll have a bit of a tougher time realigning to a new target. Again, having seen that the Brutix holds on to the same mass and inertia as its Tech 8 variant, I am kind of hoping that this just gets pulled down. It's a minor change, just bring it down to 0.48, keep it the same as the Tech 8 Drake. It's already a slow, cumbersome battlecruiser, no need to make it even more so, I think. Looking at its trait bonuses though, being a Drake it gets the same bonus, 25% increased medium missile torpedo velocity, so we're getting that extra range there. Looking at advanced battlecruiser command, we're getting the same increases to our shield resistance, which is amazing. Having 20% passive shield resistance to electromagnetic damage on its own is already pretty powerful. Adding in all of the other resistances as well there, the fact that this thing's getting that 33,000 odd tank is... It means the Drake E-War is going to be one heck of a hard nut to crack. You're going to be throwing a lot of firepower at this to try and break through that shields. That's assuming you don't have a logistics ship or a guardian ship nearby as well, just to make an absolute nightmare out of the situation. You're also getting those bonuses. This, of course, is a difference between the Tech 8 and the Tech 10 variants. The guidance disruption strength and guidance disruption optimal range. So if you are going to be using guidance disruptors in your mid slots, they're going to be much more effective at screwing with your enemy's missile systems, which, of course, is the entire point of an E-War ship. When we look, though, at Advanced Medium Missile Torpedo Upgrade, we've gone here from 12.5% additional medium missile kinetic damage and 12% medium missile thermal damage, up to 16%. So we're now looking at a fairly big increase across the board there, but it is only to the kinetic and the thermal damage, which still confuses me ever so slightly. Yeah, I mean, okay, it's, it just means that what looks like a 16% increase looks massive, but it's actually not all that much. Across the board, it's basically like the others. It's an 8% increase across the board. If you assume that obviously the electromagnetic and the explosive are not getting any increases at all, that's +0. The +16 then averages out as +8 across the board. Obviously, it's kinetic and thermal are nice to have, especially since they're both effective against shields and armor. Neither one really misses out. Like obviously, if it was additional thermal and kinetic and explosive, then yes, awesome, you're going to punch through armor quicker, but you're still going to struggle on shields. Whereas obviously, if you had electromagnetic and thermal, you're going to do better against shields, but weaker against armor. Across the board though, we're looking here at a ship that not only looks badass, but has a direct upgrade over its Tech 8 cousin. It's a big increase across the board. You know, it's smaller, it's faster, it hits harder, it has more tank. It's the Drake, but better. And it just, oh, it looks so cool. Can't wait to see these things flying. We have, of course, saved the best for last, the Hurricane E-War, because everyone knows that the Hurricane hull is probably my favourite hull in the game. I may be a frigate main, that most people know that, you know, I love my Thrashers, but the Hurricane is still by far my favourite hull in the entirety of New Eden. This thing is just beautiful, and I love that it's going to get the Rose Thorn skin, because that's what I'm rocking on my Tier 8 Hurricane at the moment, on my Hurricane ult. Yes, I have an ult dedicated entirely to flying Hurricanes, but even without that, it's still a really cool looking ship. This sort of sandy colour to it is very unusual. Once you're used to sort of the Minmatar rust colour and all that kind of thing, it's pretty cool. Like, look, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of wish this was like the Harbinger or the Drake and it had that sort of deep, dark black colour with orange detailing and all that kind of badassery to it, but it's still a pretty sweet looking ship. Anyway, looking at the attributes and fittings, this again follows the Drake's profile, not the Harbinger and the Brutix, where we're getting 5 mid slots and 4 lows. Here we're getting the 4 mid slots and 5 lows, so we're retaining the amount of low slots that the Tech 8 Hurricane had, whilst adding in a mid slot. This ultimately means we then end up with 1 drone tube that launches small or mediums, 7 high slots, 4 mids, 5 lows, and 3 of each of the rig types. So again, we have a direct upgrade in terms of fitting profile. We've got the exact same fitting profile as the Tech 8 Hurricane, but adding that additional mid slot. Now, as we look at things here, otherwise, again, across the board, it is straight up upgrades. Power grid has increased from 875 to 964, and we've got an additional mid slot. We need more power grid so we can actually put something in there. The capacitor has increased as well. 2,363 has gone up to 2,823. That's a nice change there. Allows us to keep that E-War running fairly comfortably. Defences, again, increased 28,392 up to 34,971. That shield is pretty big. Okay, it's not quite as big as the Drake's, but still a battlecruiser with 10,653 shield, basically, along with still having 9,500 almost in the armour tank, is pretty impressive. Interestingly as well, the signature radius has dropped even lower. We've gone from 192.9 meters down to 160.1, with a flight velocity increase of 203 up to 227. This means the fastest battlecruiser just got faster and smaller, and this actually does pose quite a threat to battleships. If you get close to a battleship, you can actually orbit and speed tank against things like large cannons, large strike cannons, large rifled railguns, large beam lasers, that kind of thing. You can actually move fast enough that you don't really take all that much damage from it, and that's an amazing little situation to be in right there. Scan resolution, big increase from 238 to 267, allows you to lock on faster and start applying damage or your electronic warfare. And again, the mass and inertia, almost identical, 12.8 million kilograms. The inertia has gone from 0.46 up to 0.47. And again, just for clarity's sake, I kind of wish that they'd gone with the Brutix approach across the board here and just kept the inertia modifiers identical. The Brutix, of course, stayed at 0.5 between Tech 8 and Tech 10, whereas the Drake went from 0.48 to 0.49, here we've gone from 0.46 to 0.47, the Harbinger gets the rawest deal, going from 0.42 up to 0.5. That gets a big jump. The others have all gone up by 0.01, the Harbinger goes up by 0.08. Anyway, we're not here to talk about the Harbinger. We've still got a fast, fairly nimble battlecruiser here, with a just better profile across the board. But what about its trait description? Well, I'm sure you can guess where this is going to go if you've been watching the rest of this video and had a look at the others. It's a Hurricane, so we're getting 25% additional medium cannon optimal range and 25% additional medium cannon accuracy fall off. That affects nicely both our autocannons and our strike cannons. And if you've seen things with me, you know that I will fit Hurricanes for both. I have a Hurricane fit with strike cannons, and I have a Hurricane fit with auto cannons. Yeah, sure, I could just swap between the two, but I just like having two that I can, play both versions with. I do tend to prefer the Brawler Cane, though. Brawler Cane tends to be my preferred playstyle with the Hurricane now that I've got enough skills to actually tank that and make it worthwhile. It's good fun just to drift through an enemy fleet and rip them apart with autocannons. And basically, as we look at the stats here, you'll see that we have got an increase across the board to your capabilities of doing exactly that. Advanced Medium Cannon upgrade now, instead of a 3% increase to damage and a 3% reduction to activation time, is now a 4% increase to damage and a 4% reduction to activation time. Now, that may not sound like much. After all, the other ships went from, like the Harbinger, went from 6% damage to 8% damage. Why has this only got a 4% damage? Well, it's because it's getting the additional damage and the faster firing, so DPS across the board is still a big increase, and it does work out, you know, the difference between 3% increase to damage and 3% faster activation time, going up to 4% damage and 4% faster activation is a big difference. You've gone from 15% all the way up to 20% on both of those stats. It only sounds like a 5% increase, but by the time you're increasing 5% upwards and 5% faster, 5% extra damage and 5% faster, you're applying a lot more damage over time. We still get a 5% increase to our flight velocity from Advanced Battlecruiser Command, but now we're also getting an increase to target pain to target effects and target pain to optimal range, which means if you're going for a strike hurricane, then you're going to be able to use a target painter quite comfortably to really help hit their targets at long range, or you can use it to paint targets in fleet engagements and just make them go down that little bit faster by blooming their signature radius by an additional 50% over what the target painter would normally do, thanks to those bonuses. Even if you don't care about the E-War though, the Hurricane E-War is just a better ship than the Tech 8 Hurricane, and I really can't wait to fly one of these. Of course I'm going to have the Rose Thorn skin on it, because to me that just looks like the Silent Rose, exactly how I've always imagined it. I mean, heck, rose and then a purple skin on it there. I mean, heck, even if you have a look at the artwork on the Redbubble store, the merchandise for the Silent Rose there, the ship's livery that my wife came up with, that sort of reddish purple in rose colours. So yeah, it's badass, and I cannot wait to be flying this thing. The Hurricane E-War, I think, is going to be my flagship once my Hurricane Alt hits Tech 10 in about 3 months' time. Oh, I can't wait, but it seems so blasted far off. Anyway folks, that really does wrap things up for this particular video. That is all 4 of the Tech 10 E-War Battlecruisers. The Drake E-War, the Hurricane E-War, the Harbinger E-War, the Brutix E-War. Let me know which one excites you the most in the comment section down below. Which one looks coolest to you? Which one are you most excited to fly? Are you flying the Tech 8 variants or even the Tech 7 prototype variants at the moment for the Hurricane and the Harbinger at least? If you're flying any of those ships, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below, and what you think of these when they come to life. Do you think that they'll have that difference where some of them get 4 mids and 5 lows and the others get 5 mids and 4 lows? Do you think they'll fix the inertia modifier and keep it the same across all the different hull types? Or do you think that's intentional and sort of part of the backstory, that it's a slightly more cumbersome ship because it's got additional sensor arrays and stuff like that to help power the electronic warfare modules? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Otherwise folks, thank you for watching right the way to the end of this one. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden!